Hey, there they are.
On TV, the FBI are always on Tony Soprano's case. Their dream scenario is to flip one of his men. Big Pussy is a central figure in Tony's tightly knit crew, but with a drugs charge hanging over him, there's nothing else he can do. He agrees to wear a wire. With the fictional New Jersey mob making the headlines, the FBI were forced to do something about the real Sopranos. Their number one target was acting boss Vinny Ocean.
At the end of the day, you need a break. You need somebody who's going to do more than just offer you confidential information. You need somebody who's willing to make tapes.
Maria got her break and Vinny met his nemesis in the unlikely shape of a man called Ralphie Guarino.
He was a short guy, medium build, salt and pepper hair, impeccably dressed, you know, a little bit of an olive complexion, you know, had to talk.
Ralphie was a gambler. He is basically not a tough guy. He's not going to go around killing people. But what he's going to do is he's going to have his schemes. And this guy's like lives to scheme. He schemes the way I dream.
Ralphie's big scam was a delivery of cash coming to the World Trade Center on the 13th of January 1998. The security van with the money arrived in the underground car park at 11 a.m. Two guards put bags of money on a trolley and took the lift to the 11th floor.
We pull some guns out, grab these bags that were being transported by bank employees, and take the elevator down and get out of the building with bags of cash.
They walked out of the building with $3 million in bags, as nonchalant as you like.
As the elevator doors open on the 11th floor.
But the heist didn't go exactly as planned. As Ralphie later put it, the three guys he chose for the job turned out to be morons.
They forgot that there were cameras all over the place. And in one particularly beautiful moment, they looked right up into the camera, which ended up on the front page of just about every newspaper the next morning. I don't know, within days they had all of them.
They got off the lift at the wrong floor. Even worse, they'd taken foreign currency, useless to Ralphie.
It was very amusing to the general New York population because here they were, they wore all these ski masks and they covered themselves up, and then they went out in the hallway, took everything off, and whoosh.
The robbery was linked back to Ralphie almost immediately. A senior FBI agent turned up at his house and offered him one chance to stay out of jail.
He was able to talk him through it and basically laid the cards on the table and said, here are your options, and you're doing yourself a lot of good and everybody else a lot of good if you join Team America. And he did. He persuaded him.
That's what it takes.
So what we did was, rather than make a big publicity, we just recovered the money and we kept it quiet.
Ralphie was now a rat. His job was to wear a wire and get close to Vinny Ocean.
If somebody suspects you and they do realize that you're taping them, you know, you're gonna get killed.
There'd be some occasions where I would wear a wire.
Ralphie was shown how to tape his friends. Frank Santasola is one of only a handful of cops who have ever infiltrated the mob.
I tape it to my chest, between my and the breast area by the solar plexus, because it indented there. And these guys are pretty smart. They're always bumping into you for a reason, to find out if you're wired. So there was a few ways of doing it. You know, and as you're doing this, for me, going through my mind is my mission. I knew that I had an hour and a half of recording time. So whatever information, I had to get it within that hour and a half, and that's plenty of time. So you hit the record button, you see the red light go on, so now you know it's recording. And then I always would say to myself, I saw the red light, because you know what? Emotions come into it, And sometimes your mind plays tricks on you. Did I put it on? Didn't I put it on? Now I know it's on. And now I'm live, I'm ready to go. Nobody's gonna... I'll look natural, right?
Just like Frank, even once he got on the inside, Ralphie would never be sure he was safe.
I remember walking into the social club, and there was no movement, and everybody's somber. So I walk up to the bar, and this guy, Frank, goes, "Hey, Cheech, we know you're a cop. Now we want you to take this money and get the fuck out of here." You know, you gotta sort of like think pretty quick. So I went to grab the money, and as I'm grabbing it, I'm saying, "Well, I know you think I'm a cop. I ain't, but I'm taking your money." And the guy puts his hand on mine, and he says, "Look, Cheech, we just have to, we just got to make sure. We just got to make sure." This was the bar, right here.
When did they flip you? Tell me. Don't lie.
Flip.
Ralphie had plenty to fear. The way the Sopranos dealt with their rat was realistic enough. No one saw the FBI visit Ralphie at home. As far as the family was concerned, he was a guy who had just pulled off a massive heist, and that made him welcome in the Jersey mob. Ralphie Guarino became the newest member of Vinny Ocean's crew.
Ralphie comes into the family because he's making money. It's always about money. Forget the rest of the stuff. Forget about honorable guys and all this. It's about money. It's a business.
Ralphie was put with Vinny's driver, Joey Masella, known as Joey O.
Joey was really a poor schmuck. He was an errand boy, collecting large amounts of money for Vinny Palermo.
Most guys in the modern mob were more like Joey than Vinny, scratching a living from disorganized crime. They managed to combine extreme violence with comical incompetence. A guy like Ralphie looked to Vinny like a godsend.
How could they not have known that Ralphie would possibly become an informant after his genius scheme exploded onto the front page of every newspaper in New York? It's hard to know, except I would point out that Ralphie kept bringing the money in, and as long as that money's coming in, the incentive to just whack somebody, it's just not there.
Joey, on the other hand, had debts up to his eyeballs. Problems with his wife, problems with his ex-wife, problems with his girlfriend. He was one screw-up away from some serious trouble.
Hey, sweetheart, listen.
He was trying to run his own gambling business, and he had terrible luck. Always. I mean, running an illegal gambling business is very, very stressful. You got to pay off your bets, and if you don't have money, and if you haven't calculated correctly, you're always owing money, and it's a huge problem.
He is always desperate for cash and constantly trying to come up with ways to make money.
Joey had been waiting half a lifetime to become a made man. Finally, Vinny gave him his chance. Vinny wanted his rival, Big Ear's Charlie Majuri, dead. Majuri lived with his mother in this house in Linden, New Jersey.
At the point that you're asked to do it, you basically have two options. Do it, or you better turn yourself in somewhere, because it's not as if you have any other choice.
Are you sure we got the right house?
I hope so.
Hey.
They spent hours parked in front of this guy's house, trying to figure out how they could get him when he's coming out.
Killing Big Ears would get Joey back in the family's favor. Instead, he achieved nothing.
The guys he was with didn't really seem to have much of a plan. It was pretty much go up to the door. If he answers it, we'll shoot him sort of thing.
Who gives a shit if he lives with the mother or not?
I'm just worried about the guy
Let's
across
get
the
it done.
street. The cop's gonna come, then what?
They spent hours till they realized that there was a state trooper parked next door who happened to live next door. They figured that probably might not be a good place to do that.
Fuck it, you guys got nothing to do anyway.
Finally, they just all gave up and drove off, and that was the end of it. And Joey Masella flew down to Florida, and he just said, "I'm not doing this. This is just, you got to set it up better than this."
And that was Joey's big chance to be a made guy gone.
But you have to ask yourself this question. Have you ever shot anybody? What's it like? How do you do it? How do you do it right? You go to school to learn how to do that?
Joey went back to his version of everyday life. This is the business end of organized crime. Two guys in a car, driving round trying to think of ways to make money. Ralphie had to keep Joey thinking he was another guy looking out for a scam. The FBI would create scenarios for him, plant jewelry or other valuables for him to pretend to steal.
You pretend you have stolen property. What you do is when you do make recoveries of stolen property, you use it to set it up, and you offer to sell it.
All the time, Ralphie was pumping Joey for information. What he and his handlers were getting was a picture of criminal incompetence.
One of the things that happens with FBI tapes is they're supposed to turn the tape recorder off when people start talking about personal stuff. They don't. They leave it on all the time.
Most of the talking is really boring because it's mostly, how are we going to make money? Who's making money? Well, how can we get a piece of that?
So far, no one suspected Ralphie wasn't what he seemed, least of all his boss, Vinnie Ocean. It was Joey who was getting himself into deeper and deeper trouble. The Jersey mob could come over like the Keystone Cops, but these clowns packed real guns.
I can't imagine what it would be like to get up every single morning thinking that some psychotic guy I owe $450,000 to could be parked outside my door.
Hold on a minute. I'll call you back.
He owed lots of money to people, and he owed money to people that were in other families. And whenever there's an issue about that, then the person that they're going to go to with their beef is your boss.
Fuck out of here.
Vinnie had had enough. He told Joey he should have him killed.
Fucking done with you.
It's probably not the best idea to kill somebody who owes you money. Because probably, if you don't kill them, they'll pay you something, so you'll at least have some money coming in. In his case, I think he became kind of an embarrassment.
It was October the 10th, 1998. Joey got a call from a bookmaker who owed him money to say he'd got $10,000 for him.
He was called to a golf course way out in Brooklyn.
They lured him out to a parking place.
And someone just pulled up and blew him away. And that was the end of Joey O. They were all trying to kill each other because everybody thought everybody else was becoming an informant.
Of course, there was an informant. The FBI were listening all along, but they weren't getting what they needed. They didn't have evidence linking Vinnie Ocean to the crimes his crew was committing.
You can't go to victims. No victim wants to come in, and they'd rather pay the loan sharking debt.
They used a tactic that had worked before.
Who is this piece of shit?
Vinnie Palermo didn't like to spend money, and so our cooperator offered him a cell phone, said, I've got this connection, and take it in as many minutes as you want. And that was the cell phone. We had both.
After Joey was killed, Ralphie was put with Tin Ear Sclafani, a gangster of the old school.
Joe Tin Ear Sclafani, so named because he's deaf in one ear, was a former Marine who is a tough guy. He's the guy that pulls the trigger.
Tin Ear might have been more frightening than Joey O, but he was just as incompetent. He wanted Ralphie's help with a hit.
He was another, we always got stuck with people who were not very productive financially. He was always looking for things to do. And so one of the things that we investigated was that Sclafani had agreed to take the hit, and he was trying to get at him. And Sclafani was obsessed with trying to kill the guy on a motorcycle, but he didn't know how to drive a motorcycle. And it was just like these endless conversations about getting a motorcycle and how he and our cooperator were going to ride on it and what they were going to do.
Other members of the crew were starting to suspect that Ralphie might be the rat after all. These were guys with a stack of bodies between them. They ordered a hit on him.
We began to worry that they were suspicious of him. We were worried about the safety of our cooperating witness. We were worried about whether or not Vinnie Palermo would flee.
The FBI was closing in on Vinnie Ocean. Ralphie's grave had already been dug. But the real Sopranos case was about to take a turn unprecedented in the history of the mob.
FBI, open up!
In The Sopranos, Tony is always waiting for that unwelcome knock at the door.
Cavalcanti crime family is one of the oldest and most entrenched crime families in the La Costa Nostra.
On the 2nd of December 1999, the police and the FBI arrested 40 members of the Cavalcanti crime family in the biggest ever swoop on the mob. The press called it the real Sopranos case. Vinnie Ocean, the real Tony Soprano, first thought about flight.
On the day of the arrest, Vinnie Palermo was found under circumstances that would indicate he was leaving home.
The day that we were supposed to take down the first case, I think 6 or 7 of the top defendants weren't home.
He had a bag with him and money with him, and he was, he clearly was ready to take off.
But Vinnie didn't get away. Like the rest of the family, he found himself in jail. The FBI had come for the De Cavalcantis, just like the 5 families in New York they tried to emulate.
They effectively brought the whole family down, and they arrested almost everybody, which is kind of unprecedented.
Vinnie was facing serious jail time.
They included murder conspiracies, loan sharking, extortion, fraud, the interstate transportation of stolen property, all manner of charges. It was a very strong case, and there were very strong charges. When you're facing that, the stronger the charges, the more difficult it is to roll the dice.
Vinnie Ocean was on the ruling committee of a mob family. He was meant to be a man of honor, to go down and do his time. But Vinnie Ocean wasn't entirely happy with that option.
For somebody like Vinnie Palermo, who led a nice life and who had a business that he enjoyed and liked the legitimacy of being a business guy, and it's a very hard thing to then settle into prison for life.
Vinnie's lawyer did a deal with the prosecutors. Vincent Vinnie Ocean Palermo agreed to cooperate. He flipped. And once Vinnie had flipped, the floodgates were open.
You couldn't put the number of informants that came out of that case on a school bus. You couldn't fit them. There were so many of them. They were rushing to get in there. Everybody was trying to get their deal as fast as possible.
A few old-timers like Tinea Sclafani chose to do their time, but something fundamental had changed in the mob.
Don't forget, years ago, guys went into that life because they really had nothing else. If they went to jail, sometimes it was almost an improvement. Today, a lot of these kids who become made guys are driving their father's brand new car at 15 years old, grow up in $1 million house. Of course, when you throw them in a cell, they're gonna cooperate. They've never been tested, and they've really been pampered most of their life.
It was the end of the line for the De Cavalcanti family. The Jersey mob thought they were the real Sopranos. They aspired to be on the same level as the New York families, and they blew it.
Listen, you look at a guy like John Gotti. Whatever he was, whatever he wasn't, you gotta give the guy a little bit of credit because he was really treated like the lowest form of dirt in prison, and he never broke. You admire that kind of quality in somebody because he backed up what he said.
The end game would play out very differently for Vinnie Ocean.
Well, Vinnie Palermo ends up in WITSEC, the Witness Protection Program. He'll move in next to you. He'll become your neighbor. You have no idea who he is. He has a new name. His name is not Vinnie Palermo. I'm sure he doesn't, go by the name Vinnie Ocean when he moves into some suburb in Phoenix.
The best days of the mob were well and truly over.
Tony Soprano is always thinking about the good old days, when he thought that mafiosi were more Spartan, they were more loyal, they obeyed the oaths of Omerta, of how to conduct themselves as men of honor.
But the so-called men of honor broke even their own rules.
May I burn in hell. I betray my friends.
In real life, they know that they're being watched, getting their pictures taken. They gotta watch that their phones aren't tapped. They gotta watch that the club that they hang in isn't bugged. They gotta be afraid now if the guy they're talking to is turn a wire on them.
They're absolutely paranoid, but you have to be.
There is no way they're as powerful today as they was, say, 30, 40, 20 years ago. Today, they're lucky they can get a reservation at a restaurant, really, literally.
The mob looks finished as a viable career option. But as one opportunity ends, another one begins. Tony Sirico, the actor on the left, is convincing as Paulie Walnuts for a reason. Before he became an actor, Sirico was arrested 28 times and jailed for 7 years.
Let's whack this cocksucker and be done with it.
He limps because he was shot. The kind of guys who used to join the mob now play mobsters on The Sopranos. While the real Jersey mob do their time or hide away in witness protection, there's one mafia family that's alive and well and living in New Jersey for now. The Sopranos.